In 1941, when the United States got into the war, what age were you and were you in school?
I was 17 at that time. Back then I got scarlet fever, and back then they put a black wreath on your door, and you couldn't come and go unless you were, my dad had to work, or if they had to go for groceries. Somebody could do that, but other than that, and that's the reason that I ended up going into the service, because I was 18, and when you were 18, irrespective of what you thought you should do, but then I didn't get drafted. I enlisted in the Navy because my sister was already in, and she took me over to Harrisburg to be interviewed. At that time, that's when I joined it.
Tell me about the people in your high school class.
Quite a few of those boys, a lot of them was in the same class I was, which had been the class of 46.
Okay.
And a lot of them stayed, finished their time. Now, the war was all but over. But all of them, there was quite a few of them enlisted in for a period of time. In fact, the one, Sam Mattingly, stayed in for 20-some years and retired.
Wow. You really got in at the end of the war.
Yes, exactly. I'd let that be known.
Let's take the story from when you enlisted. Where did you get sent for training?
Sampson, New York.
And what did they teach you there? Basic training?
Yes, well, they had you go out, and in the morning you'd take a rifle and you'd hold it above your head and run around the track a couple of times, and they'd bring you back.
Where did you go after Sampson? How did they decide what specialty area you would be going into?
I went out to California because I wanted to go out there. They had for corpsmen. You would become a pharmacist if you attended that. And I attended, and I was really fortunate. I had decent marks and all. My mother, when we were younger, to practical nursing school in York, and she was very helpful with anything with medical things.
Well, it sounds like you got some good medical training when you were in California. Well, I would be very interested in learning about the hospitals and what you did there. We have interviewed some nurses, and they mentioned corpsmen, and I didn't know what a corpsman was. So could you start by telling us what things you did in the hospitals?
Well, you do the basic things the nurses do.
Okay.
But you do some of the jobs that they don't do, like if he needs a bedpan or something like that, or he needs help getting in and out of bed, or whatever, or something like that. Then at nighttime we would go around with the nurse and wake them to give them the pills, because they made sure they got their medication on time.
In the hospital, were you only dealing with naval personnel, or did you have Navy, Army, Marines?
The Marines were in there. I know we had Marines.
I read that you were in a smaller hospital and then you got moved to a larger hospital. Within the larger hospital, how did they decide which ward they would put people in? Was it by the kind of injury, or did they separate officers and enlisted men? How did they organize the hospital?
Enlisted men were separated. And the other question you asked was what now?
How did they decide which wards to put them in? Did you have...
I think that was just a matter of what open space they had, really.
Okay.
Truthfully. I believe that's the way it was.
Where were you assigned? Were you in a special ward?
No, I was just on a floor where we had enlisted personnel. And I think we had, I don't know, as I recall, 40 or 50 within the ward. It was a pretty good sized ward, really. I was the only one on there. And
for the entire ward.
That's a lot to cover sometimes.
Sure. One nurse and one corpsman?
Yes.
Okay. And what hours did you put in?
Well, I used to go in there, I think a regular working hour. It wasn't, maybe it was 3 or 4 hours longer, because to me, I wanted to do that if they would allow it, because I felt that I owed something to those guys that spent the time over there.
Did you work weekends?
Yes.
Okay, so you put in long hours.
Yes, and you worked holidays too.
Well, you were coming in at the end of the war.
Yes.
How long did you stay in the service, knowing that it was close to the end anyway?
About a year and a half to 2 years. I wasn't in there that long, but it was good. I would recommend that and they're talking about ladies even maybe being drafted for future use, and like the National Guard. that you have available.
How crowded were the hospitals?
We usually had, the hospitals I worked in, usually they weren't a lot of beds left.
Did those hospitals keep the wounded for how long? Until they were discharged?
Yes, yeah, depending on how much of a problem they had. Yeah, they had good personnel in there because they did have good doctors.
Did you ever stay in touch with any of the patients that you met there?
For a period of time, I had one of the guys on there, his name was, all I know is I can remember Sam, and he used to always call, we called it mushball, and he called it softball. But I remember him for a period of time we were in contact.
After the war, did you join any veterans groups?
Yes, I joined the American Legion while I was still in. So I belonged to the American Legion. I think I got with the American Legion, I think I have something like 60 or 70 years in the American Legion. They pay my dues for me now.
If you could recall back one moment, what's one of the strongest memories you have?
Strongest memory I have, we had a call, and they always assign a corpsman to go, and the corpsman's in charge of what should be done at a given time. Not that he's fully a physician as such, but we had made a call. We come upon an accident, and they were pretty bad, and I said, well, we'll take them. And they said, no, we can't do that. I said, well, for your edification, I'm the one that's in charge. I'm not going to let them lay there like that in the condition he's in, and maybe something happened to him. We're going to take him to the hospital.
This was a civilian?
Yes.
Okay.
And they said, well, you'll get into the hospital, and then I'll be in trouble, but I'm not going to, I couldn't go, and then maybe here sometime shortly thereafter, the young person passed away. And I knew I was overstepping my boundaries, but sometimes when there's certain things, boundaries are one thing, doing what's right in your own mind, and you feel very strong about it.
Would you recommend the service to people today?
Yes, I would recommend at least 2 years of service, because it really does make you realize there's other things than just football and basketball and things like that. Yes, I really do feel that way. And there was some consideration, and I don't know if you young ladies know this or not, about drafting women in the future, right? Yeah. And really that's good, because it could be like my sister. My sister went in because she felt it was her duty to go. And before the war started, used to fly planes with no safety, nothing involved. They had nerve enough to get in there, and some of them got shot down when the war was in its infancy, so forth, and they didn't fly any longer like that. In that place where we stayed, as personnel, it used to be a zoo and still is, but they put the animals someplace and did a little bit of renovation. That's where we ended up going into. But it was all right. It wasn't anything wrong
So
with
you
it.
were in the zoo during the war?
Yeah.